Hi everybody, here's Christian from Trace5 here with another video about KeyForge. We are going to be going through this deck today. I'm going to show you how this is built. This has been provided by Hive World, our local game store here in Cologne. If you're ever in Cologne, you should definitely check out Hive World. Thank you so much, Hive World, for doing this. And also a quick reminder that we are going to be live streaming the preview event for KeyForge on the 28th of October. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you probably should, so you get notification and you won't miss this happening. We've put a lot of effort into this. We're going to make sure that the board state is always readable, that we're going to show the cards that are being played. So yeah, look forward to this one. Okay, so this deck is called He That Blindly Faces the Club, and this deck already wins on the name itself. I think that is a fantastic name. Sounds a bit like some kind of crazy experimental album from the 90s. The houses are Mars, which is personally to me is my favorite house, Brobnar, which I'm not so hot about, and this, which I'm warming up towards. The last deck that we show had some really nice discards. So let's see what's happening here. This is again the Decklist, and I'm going to show you real quick. No spoilers, I guess. Yeah, we're going to go through those cards right away. So the first one is going to be, we're going to start with the Brobnars, and it's going to be Anger, and there's actually more Anger in this. There's two Angers in here. So the Anger does, it's an action. You will get an Ember for this, and it says when you play, ready and fight with a friendly creature. I kind of like this. It allows you to kind of like, there's multiple ways how you can use it. You can activate House Brobnar and then activate attack with your Brobnar guys, but also attack with some other creatures that you may have on the board. So that's really nice. Another thing you can do is, yeah, you can activate Brobnar, reap with your Brobnar creature, but then activate it and fight with it as well. So you kind of get more value out of your creatures. And the fact that you get an Amber is really nice. Something I'm not so hot about is the fact that you can only activate it to fight with it. Sometimes you have a creature that does more than just fighting, and you would love to activate it and to use its ability, or maybe to reap with it, and that's not what Anger does. So yeah, that's a bit limited in this way. So this is a really good card, but a card that doesn't really work that great in this deck, sadly. So far it hasn't worked so great. So it says, it's an action. It says, for the remainder of the turn, gain 1 Ember each time an enemy creature is destroyed. So this kind of like, if you have some kind of like really killer turn set up where you're gonna destroy a lot of creatures, then you're gonna play loot the bodies before you do that, and then you're gonna get a lot of Ember from this. Hasn't happened in our test games yet, but maybe against the right kind of deck, and so the opponent is really surprised, and you might pull it off. So this one is called a Tremor. It says stun a creature in each of its neighbors, which is just solid. It's not really removal, but it kind of slows your opponent so much down. It could just as well be removal. Really good when you play it on a creature that when you can like stun creatures of multiple houses at the same time, so they cannot like just activate a house and undo all this damage that you do, but actually do force them to actually activate multiple houses to undo all this stunning. Here's a creature, 6 strength, a Valder. It's a giant. Valder deals 2 damage while attacking enemy creature on the flank. It's a fine Brobnar creature. It doesn't do anything special, but it does good fighting. It's just 6 strength is really strong, and it could be potentially in 8 strength. That's fine. Earthshaker is a giant, another giant 7 strength creature, and when you play it, destroy each creature with power 3 or lower. That's actually really good because it's a creature, and it has also removal as well built in. Most of the Brobnar creatures are not 3 strength, so your Brobnar creatures are fine, and you will just destroy a lot of nasty little smaller creatures. Especially good against shadows, because most of the shadow creatures are pretty small, and so you can get rid of all those pesky little asps and whatever. So that's really nice. Only works when you play it on the board. But as we're going to see, there's actually some cards in here that allows you to bounce your creatures back to your hand. This is Fire Spitter. He's strength 5. He has a armor, so that's really nice. He's a giant again, and his abilities before fight deal 1 damage to each enemy creatures. Again, kind of like a mass removal built in. And, well, the 1 damage won't kill everybody, but actually might damage some of the armor away, so that's kind of nice. And just generally, especially if an opponent has a lot of creatures, you will just deal a lot of damage with this guy. Krump. I like Krump. Krump is a good guy. So this is a giant 6 strength. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Krump, its controller loses one ember, which is fine. It's like you have Krump and you can smash your opponents to pieces and you get ember for this. So that's kind of nice, especially if you also have like the loot the bodies as well in here. If you manage, if your Krump manages to destroy a lot of things, you have to think of some way of keeping Krump alive if you want to get a lot of value from him. Otherwise, it's great because you don't. With creatures, usually you have like this problem where you have to decide whether you want to attack to kind of like control your opponent's board state, or if you want to keep them and just reap with them, because you cannot do both. But Krump kind of does both. You can get ember and destroy creatures at the same time. Krump is good. I like Krump. I also like this guy. He's the rare. He's the rare of Brobnar in this deck. So this is the Rock Hurling Giant. During your turn, each time you discard a Brobnar card from your hand, you may deal 4 damage to a creature. So this is good because it also works on the first turn, so you can play this guy and then discard a Brobnar card and then immediately deal 4 damage, and 4 damage is significant. That's actually a lot of damage. So, and it actually works all the time, whenever you discard from your hand, so that's actually really strong. And the only problem I have with that is usually I actually want to play my Brobnar creatures, my Brobnar cards. So it's kind of like you play him and then you never play any other creature because you want to discard them to make damage with this. So it's kind of like pulling you in different directions, which is a bit of a bummer. I would love to have maybe some ability to bring back Brobnar creatures from my discard pile in my hand, so I can like discard them and get them back and then play them maybe. This is a bit of a... I think this guy gets really good if he gets a lot of support, which, spoiler alert, this deck doesn't really have that. I like Troll. 8 strength is strong, and when you reap with him, he heals 3 damage. So the idea is that you maybe attack something very strong, you get a lot of damage, and then next turn you activate Brobnar again, and this time you reap with him and lets him recover the damage. That's fine, that's really good. A really strong, solid creature. So yeah, this is the War Drummer. And when you play him, he's a 3, or I guess her in this case, or them, let's go with them. You return each other friendly Brobnar creature to your hand. So you gotta be careful because you might bounce some creatures that you don't want to get bounced on your hand. And usually it's not as big of a problem as you might think. So you usually, even if you have creatures that you want to keep on your board, you can just attack with those creatures or reap with them, then they get exhausted anyway. And then you bounce them back on your hand and you can just replay them. So it doesn't make any difference. You can even actually reposition them, so that's kind of nice. Yeah, but otherwise, like War Drummer, there's obviously now a very good combo now happening with or War Drummer, and I think the Earthshaker guy that does a lot of damage. Yeah, it's Earthshaker, where destroy each creature with a power 3 or lower. So you can like bounce your Earthshaker and replay him if more strength 3 creatures show up. Blood of Titans. I like this one. I like generally upgrades. I don't know. I like having small creatures and upgrading them and turning into really great creatures. So this gives you an Ember. It's an upgrade that you put on a creature, and it says this creature gets +5 power. So that's actually really cool, and there's some really cool targets for this guy in this deck where we had Krump before, and I talked about how much I like Krump. And so if Krump gets Blood of the Titans, it means that he can smash more things and you get more Ember. So that's really great. Control the Weak. So now we're moving on to this. Control the Weak will get you an Ember, and choose a house on your opponent's identity card. Your opponent must choose that house as their active house on their next turn. So there's certain types of pleasures that some cards can give you. And there is this very special type of pleasure where You name a house, and the opponent has to pick this house on the next turn. And the opponent then says, I'm gonna pick that house. I'm gonna do nothing. It's your turn. That feels good. That feels very good. It happened to me, and oof, I want more of that. But sometimes, of course, you say a house and they just vomit all of the cards in you because you got it wrong. It's kind of nice when the opponent's setting up some kind of turn where they kind of like maybe used something to bounce a lot of cards on their hand, you know, and they're like, oh, they're prepping up to drop, you know, a lot of shadows, and you say like, but you have to do Logos this turn, and like, no. Or if they have built up a huge board state and you're afraid they're gonna reap with all those creatures or attack with all those creatures, and you say like, nah, but you then cannot use it. It's actually a very good card, very flexible, and even if it does nothing, at least you will get an Amber from this. Creeping Oblivion. So this is a rare, and this says play, purge up to 2 cards from a discard pile. Not that great, but you know, if your opponent has some really nasty cards that you're afraid that are coming back, maybe, you know, something like Switch and Bait, you know, or some nasty creature that you're worried that they might get back, then that's a really great way of getting rid of them. You get an Amber in the process, so that's really fine. Something that's a really highlight of this card is the flavor text. It says, as far as Oblivions go, it's one of my bottom 3. It's in my bottom 3. It's, yeah, as if there's like a lot of different Oblivions. I don't know, I like it. It's my kind of humor. Okay, so this is probably one of my favorite discards so far. Whenever I get this deck, I just want to have a million of those guys because I love this. So this is an artifact, so you install it, or you play it on a board and it stays there. And then it has an action, use a friendly creature. That doesn't seem like that is so fantastic, but it's actually really great because you can select this as your house and then do your this kind of shenanigans, but then also keep using other creatures. And the important thing here that says use a friendly creature. So you can do whatever you want with that creature. You can activate your special abilities, you can attack, you can reap, you know, it's very flexible, very unlike Anger that we saw previously. So that's really nice, I like it. Okay. So I'm kind of shocked that this is not the rare, because this is the Lash of Broken Dreams, and it's really good. I like it a lot. It's kind of like the end game. That's how the end game of this deck looks like. So it says it's an artifact. Again, you play it on the board. It says action keys cost +3 Amber during your opponent's next turn. So what happens usually is like once your opponent is about to forge their 3rd key or so, you're gonna have to keep returning to house this to activate this artifact every turn. So, you know, they have to have 9 Amber to forge their final key, and that buys you maybe some extra time to get to your last key yourself. Obviously very good with the Dominator bubble, because as you're switching to house this to activate this guy, you can keep using your other creatures as well. I'm just a bit disappointed that there's like just 1 bubble in here. I think it would be nicer if there were 2 bubbles. But obviously very strong artifact. If your opponent has some cards that cannot control artifacts, this can backfire spectacularly. Alright, so this is another artifact. This one gives you an Amber when you play it, and it says it is an Omni ability, so it can be used by any house. So, you know, you're Brabner and can still use it. It says, sacrifice life ward. Your opponent cannot play creatures on their next turn. Which is kind of nice. It really plays well into the control the weak kind of stuff, where it's like you can control, you can slow down your opponent a little bit. If they cannot play creatures, then maybe you can run away with your Brobnar's guys or something like this. It's kind of nice. Okay, so this is something I would really want to show you guys, because there has been a lot of speculation, you know, how does the random deck generation work, and there, you know, FFG has been very vocal about saying like there is some algorithm, and the algorithm makes sure that the decks are all meaningful and they all kind of like make use, you know, they pick useful cards, so you never get left stranded with a dead card. Well, Exhibit A in this case is, so this is Sacrificial Altar. It gives you at least an Amber. It's an artifact. You play it on the board, and then you have an action here says purge a friendly human creature from play. If you do, play a creature from your discard pile. the important parts here, it took me some while to figure this out. We actually played it wrong in a couple of games and then realized, wait a minute, it says human creature. So it only works if you purge a friendly human creatures. So that kind of like relies on you having human creatures in your deck. Spoiler alert, I don't think there's human creatures in this deck. There's also no way for you to obtain human creatures, like controlling maybe an opponent's creature and then sacrificing it. That would be nice. That's not possible. The deck doesn't have any abilities like this. So this is a dead card. So this is kind of interesting, and I'm actually interested to see if is this just like a mistake? Like, are there other cards that kind of make sure that you have, like, you know, elf or whatever creatures that if you have this, or if this is actually like if they just didn't care about it, going into details like this. If this is actually something that can come up with other cards as well. I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think, and if you have opened KeyForge decks yourselves, let me know if you run into similar problems. But this is actually really a huge disappointment, and it's actually like a really interesting strategic decision where you know about this and you're just like, should I even play it? I mean, it gives you an ember, so that's great. But then if the opponent can take hold of it with some kind of like artifact control shenanigans, then they might actually get more use out of it than you will be able to do. So it's kind of like, I'm not sure about that one. I'm definitely a huge, that's a low point of this entire deck. Come on, guys. Come on, FFG. Okay, so this one is a Drumble. It's a 2-strength creature. We might have, no, you just have one of those. It's a fairly small creature. It is elusive though, so it's kind of difficult to kill. You have to attack it twice. And then it says, play if your opponent has 7 or more ember, capture all of it. So all of the ember goes on this creature, and it's it's kind of fairly difficult to kill because it's elusive. I mean, if you get 2 damage on it, then it dies immediately, but attacking it might be difficult a little bit. I really like this one. It's a bit sad that you have to wait until your opponent has 7 or more amber. That kind of takes a lot of time. And so sometimes you might be having this on your starting hand, and it's like, should I play it now? But then the payoff is so huge if you can play it when the opponent has 7 amber. I like it because it also works really well with the Lash of Broken Dreams. So that's really good. I had a lot of fun with this guy. So this is the Dust Imp, and again another small creature, and when it's destroyed, you gain 2 amber. That's again a really nice creature. Can reap with this. The opponent won't care because they won't kill the Dust Imp for you. They will force you to run into something with this Dust Imp. There's the Pit Demon. There's actually 2 Pit Demons here. I love those guys. They're really great. They're really beefy, 5 strength, so not that beefy, but not insignificant. And it's a demon, and it says action, steal 1 amber. And there is a flavor text in here. They come from another world. They are pure evil, made flesh and steel, and they lurk in the darkest corners of the land. Yes, I'm comfortable calling them demons. Okay. All right, Science Officer Wu. The action steal 1 amber is really strong because you can get them out, you can steal amber, and you can already see maybe how this deck works. In end game, you have those guys. I'm gonna show you later on. You have those guys, the Lash, and then the Bauble, which allows you to steal amber from the opponent, while they're keeping them from forging the key with the Lash, and also activating other creatures as well. So that's really strong. So this is Shuffles, small creature, 2 strength, and it is an imp, not a human. At the end of your turn, your opponent loses 1 amber. This is also really great, again, for an end game kind of scenario where you're trying to keep your opponent from winning. They have to deal with this. Obviously, they cannot lose an amber every turn. And meanwhile, you can maybe pull ahead. This is Toxin. It's 3 strength creature. Your opponent discards a random card from your hand when you reap with this creature. Doesn't rock my world, but sometimes you might hit something that's really strong and then you're very happy. All right, moving on to Mars. Mars is one of my favorite factions so far. This specific deck doesn't really blow my mind when it comes to Mars cards, but there's some good stuff in here, and Orbital Bombardment is already a really good start. I think that's a really neat card that I want to see in every Mars deck, maybe. So the idea is that you get an Ember, and then you reveal Mars creatures from your hand, and for each Mars creature reveal, you do 2 damage, and you can then distribute this damage on your opponent's creature. So that's a really good, like a mass removal kind of thing. That and then, you know, you don't have to discard the Mars creatures, just show the Mars creatures, and then you can play them afterwards. So that's really good preparation for your Mars invasion. This is a card that I think has very creepy artwork. I don't know, that guy looks just weird. So this is Phosphorus Stars, and seems to be some kind of drug that the Martians are sniffling. It says play stun each, so it's an action, and then the action says stun each non-Mars creature, gain 2 chains. So it's kind of like a mass removal, but not really kind of thing. It's kind of like just, you know, stuns everybody. It's important to note that it also stuns your own creatures. So if you have some guys on a board and some kind of Brobnars, they also get stunned. So it's not the best, kind of like the Mars guys don't like to mix with other creatures. Maybe good to have like early on perhaps, or something like this. Might be also kind of like a huge game changer late in the game. I'm not sure. There's a lot of moments where I don't want to play this. That's something that I don't like about this. All right, so this is a sample collection. So it's an action, play, put an enemy creature into your archives for each key your opponent has forged. If any of these creatures leave your archives, they are put into their owner's hand instead. So this is just excellent removal, I would say. So you just basically, you know, take an enemy's creature on the board and you tuck it away in your own archives. And so the idea is that you obviously will never get the cards from archives, so those creatures stay in your archives forever. So they kind of like removed from the game almost, if you never get the cards from your archives. It doesn't work at the beginning of the game because there's no keys forged, but as your opponent's forging keys, it gets stronger and stronger. So up to 2 creatures can get can be put into your archives. Really strong, really great against creatures that are really difficult to get or protected by some kind of like some kind of protective creatures. Really nice. Squawker is again one of those cards I want to see in every deck. This is so good. So you get an Ember for this, and you ready a Mars creature or stun a non-Mars creature. So it's very flexible. The ability to ready Mars creature means that you can play a Mars creature and ready it immediately and then use it on the turn that you played it. Or you can use a Mars creature, it gets exhausted, then you ready it again and use it again. So there's like a lot of things that you can do. Usually I play it on Mars creatures, but the fact that you can also even use it as a way to stun a non-Mars creature, it makes it really flexible and just a really fantastic card. I love it. Okay, so this is an interesting one, Crystal Hive. So it's an artifact, it's a location, and it has an action. For the remainder of the turn, gain 1 Ember each time a creature reaps. So this has huge potential for tremendous payoffs if your Mars guys start reaping stuff. Just one time reaping gives you 2 Embers for this potentially. Never really worked out in our test game so far, but I think if you draw it early and you drop a lot of Mars creatures, then this might be really, really strong. Incubation Chamber, another location artifact. So this is interesting. It is one of those Omni guys, so you can use it from doesn't matter like from which faction, which house you've chosen. And it says reveal Mars creature from your hand. If you do, archive it. So this is interesting. So I like that it's an Omni ability that doesn't destroy the artifact. A lot of the artifacts that have Omni abilities are kind of like one use artifact. You use them and you destroy them afterwards, like blow something up, And this thing doesn't do that. So the idea is, I guess you would play it early on, maybe as your first card, perhaps even, and then every time you have a Mars creature, you put it into your archive, and you keep piling up those Mars creatures in your archive, and eventually, when you're ready, you can just get it all out of the archives, maybe use a orbital bombardment and just drop them all off in one turn. So you can create like these incredibly explosive Martian turns, which is, that's really choice. I like this a lot. Didn't work out in our test games so far, but I think this can be really, really strong. Oh, love the Ether Spider. Oh, such a good creature, such a good basic solid Mars creature. So it's 7 strength. It doesn't do any damage when fighting, so it's kind of like only like it just, you know, stays on the back and just reaps and does nothing else. But also each ember that would be added to your opponent's pool is captured by the Ether Spider instead. So good. So this guy just keeps collecting all of the ember that the opponent would be getting, and your opponent has to deal with this guy, especially if there's some kind of way of protecting your doodles, then that will be very difficult. That's something that slows your opponent down. Definitely you might have to eat some kind of removal, but that basically means that the removal is gone. And also slows them down because it means that, you know, all this ember is gone. They have to deal with this. They cannot forge any key as long as this guy is out. So they kind of have to find an answer for this, and that's something I really like. Mind Warper. I think there is a second Mind Warper in this deck. Yeah, there's 2 Mind Warpers. Not my favorite Mars creature. It's fine. It's actually it's fine. It's strength 2, so it's a bit weak. At least it's elusive. You cannot attack it as easily. You have to attack twice to actually kill it. And the idea is that as an action, choose an enemy creature. It captures 1 from its own side. So this is something important to remember. So the capturing is, you know, you put an ember from a stockpile on a creature, and if that creature is destroyed, the ember goes to the opponent's stockpile. So usually you steal from opponent, and then if the opponent kills your creature, then it goes back to your opponent. But this says choose an enemy creature. It captures 1 ember from its own side. So it's kind of like a delayed steal, because the ember goes from your opponent's stockpile on your opponent creature, and if you kill that creature, you will get that ember. So again, kind of like a delayed steal. Something I don't like about it is that is an action, so it doesn't do anything else because of it. So it's a bit it's a bit tricky. But yeah, there's 2 of them in here, and don't mind. It's a good Mars creature. Oh yeah, there's a bit of an anti-synergy happening here, where I told you that there is like this. There was this artifact that has that gives you additional ember when you reap, but this guy doesn't reap, so it's kind of like, should I reap or should I steal instead? It's a bit of a conundrum. All right, so this is, oh jeebus, how do you pronounce this? Yxli Marauder, Yxli Marauder, I guess. So he's a Martian soldier. Yxli Marauder gets +1 power for each ember on it. And it says play, capture 1 ember for each friendly ready Mars creature. So, so this guy wants to come last, right? So you wanna play some Mars creatures. On the next turn you want to ready them, and then you want to bring this guy out. Or maybe there's a squawker happening. I haven't seen situations where he would have more than 2 amber on it. And I guess that's the kind of like par for the course for this guy. It's really nice that he gets stronger. Otherwise, he doesn't really do too much. Although capturing, he does capture, so that's kind of nice. So this is a Xelio boulder, I guess. Oh man, there's got to be a lot of this could be like an entire genre of people trying to pronounce Martian names. So he's a Martian soldier. Fight or reap. Deal 2 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys this creature, purge it. And then he's a 3 strength. I love this guy. I want to have like 5 of those guys in my deck. This is so good. So 3 strength is fine. Dies to a lot of stuff, but it's fine. You know, it's a frontline kind of troop kind of stuff. And then this ability like that triggers on fighting and reaping. And then he does damage when he fights and reaps. That's great. So you can like reap, and then you also deal some damage at the same time, or you can fight and do some extra damage. Something to keep in mind again, that fight triggers at the end of the fight, so he has to survive the fight to do the 2 damage. But otherwise he's great, I love him. I'm just really sad that there's just one of those guys. I wanna have 5, or at least 3. And finally the big boy, the Zorg. He's a beast, so he enters the play stunned. So he's stunned from the get-go. He's, you know, exhausted and stunned when he comes in. So you have to kind of like invest another turn to make him ready. But then, once he's ready, before fight, stun the creature Zorg fights and each of that creature's neighbors. That's great. Stunning, I feel like stunning is to some extent even more powerful than just simply removing the creatures, because they're still there and the opponent's like, ugh, I have to activate them, you know. It's like it slows the opponent down so much. It often is more, the opponent kind of like wants to actually destroy those creatures, because investing more time into those creatures slows him down so much. So yeah, I really like Zorg. The fact that you have to unstun him is a bit sad. But you know, you have something like Squawker, which allows you to maybe, when you play him, to activate him immediately, to ready him immediately, so you can immediately use him to remove his stun. So there's ways of playing him a bit faster. And 7 strength is not too shabby. It's a good creature. It can compete with some Brobnar creatures, so that's fine. All right, so this is it for this deck. Now, some, I guess, combos that I found in this deck. So I guess these guys, the Zilio Bolter, jeez, I don't know how to pronounce this, and the Crystal Hive, obviously two cards that work well together, but I would think there's not enough those guys for the Crystal Hive to shine, so that's a bit of a disappointment here. But technically, I guess in other decks where you get more of these guys in here, this should work really nicely. Not much of a combo, but I really like the Incubation Chamber for Mars. There's, I think, a lot of Mars abilities that work really well with this guy. In this deck, there's just this Orbital Bombardment that works well with this. So idea is that you collect your Mars creatures throughout your game. And then late game, you know, you get all of the Mars creatures from your archives and do a huge Orbital Bombardment. And then play the Mars creatures, do like a Mars power turn. I like this. Again, I think for this to work well, I don't know, I feel like I don't really have really good creatures in this deck for this to work, or maybe multiple orbital bombardments, or maybe something that we saw, something like a Mother Gun, which is like an artifact that does orbital bombardment basically. So yeah, I think there's better Mars cards to work with the Incubator, but if you have those Mars cards, then you definitely want to see the Incubator. We already talked about it at the beginning, but we have like this Earthshaker and the War Drummer. Those two guys are a bit of a buddy situation here, because, you know, you play the Earthshaker, it destroys all the creatures. Later on you play the War Drummer, and then you play the Earthshaker again. The only problem is that the Earthshaker will kill the War Drummer, so you will kind of waste the War Drummer a little bit. But otherwise, you know, you can repeat this board clearing type of effect of Earthshaker, so that's really nice. Personally, I really like the Blood of the Titans again. It's very versatile. There's, I think, some good targets in here. I mean, the target that I put it on initially was just Krump. And that's really great because you have like this huge, you know, beefy dude that just kills everybody and gets Ember as a reward for this. So that's really nice. Why not? It's good. I think you could put it on some really surprising creatures as well, like some, you know, some smaller creatures that suddenly get very beefy and it's very difficult to deal with them. It's fun. It's a fun card. One theme that this deck has going on a little bit is like being able to activate creatures out of their house. So you have Anger, being able to attack with good creatures that are not in House Brabnor. You have like this Dominator Bauble that does the same. And of course you have the Squawker. So each of the houses actually provides their own cards that allow you to activate other cards. I guess the Squawker doesn't really it's not really the same thing. I guess the Squawker is like just able to ready a card, so that's kind of like maybe a different thing. But generally you are very flexible in the way you can use creatures in this deck. So this deck is really good with creatures. It has a lot of support for creatures, for being able to be very flexible with your creatures. And something I noticed, like this deck basically generates a really good end game with this. So you have like your pit demons, which are, you know, tough creatures to deal with, and they kind of like allow you to steal Ember every turn. You have Shaffles, which also slows down your enemy. Of course, you have, you know, the star of the show, you have Flash of Broken Dreams, which kind of stops your enemy from forging a key. And then, of course, you still have the Dominator Bubble, just a single one, would love to see two here, that allows you to activate all the creatures from your other houses, like Brobnar and stuff like that. So you have like this, you activate this every turn, and then just keep using the Lash, and keep using your strong disc creatures, or the creatures from your other houses to kind of like lock your opponent out. That works really well, and it was really fine. Generally, this deck is inferior to the other deck that we opened. We played with both decks. They are kind of, they were still not very one-sided games. You know, both games were very close. We were both at 2 keys, and we were kind of like starting to keeping each other from scoring out. But we noticed that this is definitely what we would call a subpar deck, and that's something that a lot of people are a bit worried about, you know, that there's this random number generator, and that the random number generator generates some decks, and some of the decks will just be a bit underpowered. And I think this is a bit of an underpowered deck. There is just some cards that are just don't play just as well, and there's even some really nasty anti-synergies in here, which I really don't like. So for example, you have Incubation Chamber that you know, puts a lot of Mars creatures in your archives. But then you also have Sample Collection that kind of captures your opponent's creature into your archives and kind of like discourages you from using your archives this way. So you kind of have to be careful of what, it's kind of like sends mixed signals on what your archives are for. And of course, the Sacrificial Altar is the thing that is the biggest disappointment here, and kind of like also puts a bit of a damper on the excitement of this algorithm creating those decks, because clearly this algorithm kind of like really dropped the ball on this one. Like, so there's no human creatures in this deck, I guess. Maybe I missed one. Maybe there's one that I haven't noticed. But yeah, it seems to me like there is no human creatures in here. So this Sacrificial Altar is really just a dead card in this deck. A bit of a disappointment here. But yeah, but it's kind of interesting for me to see that even though this deck is a bit underpowered and clearly something that you probably wouldn't be continue playing in the long term, still against a random other deck, it still created fun and exciting games. It was really fun playing with those cards, and you still had the opportunity for power plays. Something that also notices that I definitely noticed myself getting better at playing the deck. I definitely saw myself understanding better, you know, what are the power cards here. For example, trying to set up a Martian power turn is something that the deck might be able to do. Also understanding exactly what the end game of this deck is, trying to get the Slash out, and, you know, trying to get out your discards and always choosing this and then activating maybe some other cards. Also maybe knowing which card to beef up with this Brobnar upgrade, with the Blood of the Titans. So, you know, while this deck might be a bit of an underpowered, it's still a lot of fun to play with it. So I think that's might be like the kind of like the takeaway. Their decks are definitely have varying strengths, but that doesn't really spoil the fun with this game. So yeah, let me know maybe if you have found some really cool combos in here that maybe I missed. Maybe it was just my own silliness that made me feel like this deck was a bit underpowered. Let me know what you think. Again, this is a very new game, and everybody is really just trying to understand, trying to wrap their mind around this, and that's definitely me as well. And again, a reminder that on the 28th of October, the 20th of October, we are going to be live streaming the big preview event, the first time people are going to play KeyForge competitively. And again, we have like a huge setup going on where we're going to show, I'm going to try to show the cards that are being played live, so we can kind of follow what's happening. Yeah, so far the games that we have are very exciting, and they really might be really exciting to watch. And we want to make sure that you guys understand what is happening on the stream. Otherwise, see you next time around, guys. Bye bye.